meeting? Well, let me start out actually by saying that we will be recording this meeting, and then we will post the recording on the various association social media accounts for you to take a look at afterwards. So again, let me welcome everyone tonight. This is a jointly planned meeting by East Berkeley, Blackstone, Franklin Square, and Worcester Square area neighborhood associations. I believe we also may have participants on from other associations such as Pilot and 8th Street associations. In the interest of time tonight, I'm not going to do my usual introduction of board members, but I would like to introduce David Stone and Jonathan Alves, if he's here, from Blackstone, and Andy Brand, John Stewagen, and Desmond Murphy from Worcester Square. I'd also like to acknowledge staff from our various state representatives and city councilors joining us here tonight. I saw staff from Councilors Flynn, Fitzgerald, Mikowitz, and at-large Santanis, and John Moran and Nick Collins. I don't know if any of the actual councilors or representatives were on, but if you are, please let us know. And we appreciate your attention. Sorry.
Hi, folks. Council Fitzgerald here. Sorry, I'm in the car, but I am listening in. So good,
Well,
great
there
to
you
be
go.
here, and
Well,
I love the South End crew together. This is great.
Thank you, and we really appreciate taking the time out of your busy schedules to come tonight. We do have a busy agenda tonight, but I want to say a quick word about this joint meeting. As most of you know, the South End is represented by many different neighborhood associations. While it's true that each distinct neighborhood has its own issues of interest, there are also many issues that affect the South End as a whole. And for a long time, we have not had a cohesive and meaningful forum to allow our voices to be heard on those issues. Our agenda tonight reflects some of those broader issues: safety and security, and the conditions of our streets and sidewalks. We'd also hope to introduce residents of the various neighborhoods to new businesses and other activities going on in the various other neighborhoods in the South End. As an ongoing matter, we plan to supplement our individual association meetings with more of these joint meetings to amplify to the city administration the voice of our residents on those broader matters of concern to our residents. We hope you will find these joint meetings to be an important addition to the meetings of our individual associations. And of course, we would appreciate any feedback you might have on the format of tonight's meeting. Lastly, I'd like to thank David, Jonathan, Andy, John, and Desmond for the time and effort they put in with me to plan tonight's meeting. So with that, I would like to turn the meeting over to Captain Sweeney of the Boston Police Department for our first agenda item of safety and security. And again, Captain Sweeney, we appreciate your taking the time out of your schedule to be here tonight.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And I just want to say, I think it's great these three groups get together. You know, I know you all, I appreciate all your support over the years, so it's really good to, you know, we usually do separate meetings, but it's good to have everyone on one call. And I want to start out first by apologizing for the short notice. I know we sent some stuff out about our community CompStat that was going to be a cathedral in a couple nights. We were, you know, looking forward to, very happy. And we had an unfortunate incident within the department of the passing of a young officer who's only been on a couple years. And the services with him are going to be Wednesday and Thursday. So, you know, talking to the commissioner and everything, we apologize for that postponement, but we're planning on hopefully at the end of the month having this event, and we're just working on a couple dates with everyone's schedule. So, and just briefly quick what that is, like CompStat is a bi-weekly meeting that the captains have with the commissioner and the command staff, and heads of other units in the department, going over crime trends, patterns, things going on in everyone's district. And when the commissioner came on board, took over the department, he wanted to bring that out to the districts. And, you know, first I was like, oh, but we do that. Every meeting we do is what's kind of at ComStat when me and Sergeant Holgart go over the crime. So people that attend will see that. Our detectives will run through a case. They have a pretty interesting case that took place up on the district in the area, and they'll, you know, run that from beginning to end. Everyone will see that, how that happens. And our BRIC, our Boston Regional Intelligence Unit, will go over our crime stats and trends in the area. And then Sergeant Holgart with Community Service will go over a quick presentation. So it'll be pretty interesting. We hope to get that date out soon to you. And, you know, I know hopefully a lot of people attend, and we'll get some more information on that. But if anyone has any questions about that, we can go over it. I know some surveys went out, and you know, we got those all back. We appreciate that. We'll try to have a question and answer at the end there, and you know, it'll be a good night. As far as the district as a whole, you know, we're 2 full months in now. Crime in the district, I remember when we were here last month, we were up about 13%. That's down to 1%. We've made some great strides in our larcenies with the initiative we have going on down in the malls and on Newbury and Boylston Street. So we've cut those numbers pretty good. We're seeing what's driving our crime now is a large increase in residential burglaries, but it's not people getting into people's apartments. Down in the Back Bay, we're seeing a bunch of doors to foyers jimmied open and packages being stolen. So it's not someone getting into someone's apartment, they're getting in the front door to the foyer, the hallway. It's, you know, obviously it's a break, they break in, but they steal the packages. And we had a great arrest on that down by the Prudential Center. And it was one of the suspects that was wanted for several of these. So hopefully, you know, that takes care of that issue we had going down there. But, you know, year to date, we have 19 robberies year to date. And last year at this time, we had 22, you know, so we're down 3 there. And when we talk about these robberies, I've explained before, a lot of them are shopliftings in the mall that turns into a robbery when the clerk is threatened, a weapon is pulled on the clerk, or the clerk is assaulted. So there's no street robberies where people are being attacked or robbed just coming off the train or walking home. Most of these are up in the Mass Cass area, where people around there are stealing stuff, robbing stuff from each other, or the shopliftings that's going on in the mall. We've seen a nice decrease of 18% in our larceny from motor vehicles. We're 72 at this time last year. We have 59 right now. So it's kind of trending in the right direction and, you know, looking better than last month. For your general area, like we usually kick it over to Sergeant Holgart here. He's doing another meeting for me right now. Not much going on. And this was geared towards the East Berkeley, but, you know, for the most part, we're all kind of close together. But just 8 Part 1 incidents up and around the area. We had 2 assaults and 6 larcenies. The 2 assaults was officers responded to the Whole Foods, which, you know, seems like every meeting we're talking about an issue up at the Whole Foods with some homeless issues. Homeless male assaulted the staff. Police said the male, who was known to them, approached one of the employees and began to swing a mop handle at him. A second staff member attempted to intervene and was struck by the mop handle. The suspect then dropped the mop and pulled out a knife, threatening the staff members. Suspect fled and was apprehended a short while later by the District 4 officers. We performed a show-up identification, and the victim was able to positively ID the suspect, and he was placed under arrest for assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon and assault with a dangerous weapon for swinging the mop at the first clerk. The second incident happened up at 460 Harrison Ave. There was 2 parties fighting. There was some witnesses up there. Witnesses say the suspect knocked the victim to the ground and proceeded to wrap a phone charger and cable around the victim's neck. after a quick investigation, the suspect was placed under arrest. And I think some of the names I seen might be some people that are usually on this meeting that were, witnessed this. So, great job hanging around and helping us. And it was good to get the arrest there. And the larcenies, some clothes were stolen from a laundromat. Bicycle was stolen that was locked out overnight. Altercation at a local bar restaurant where suspect grabbed the ball off the pool table and left with it. So that was a larceny, and some shoplifting up by the CVS. So relatively quiet around the area. District as a whole, we always talk about, Mass and Cass. We have a large police presence down there, and I know the other groups are on. It was a big topic of conversation in the surveys that came through, and commissioner's offices read those. We're well aware of it. We're doing our best. A lot of visibility down there, but we are seeing groups move around. Obviously, we move them from bus stops. Trying to get people, if they want to go into services. We're not having much luck with that. Kind of group moved over to Northampton Street in Harrison, having a big presence over there on Trask Street. So we're kind of moving our resources, moving this group along, but it's a concern. I know of everyone on here, basically had a pretty mild winter with the snow. And when we get moving into the springtime, it's a big concern of mine, and I know the residents. So we're going to stay on top of it, but it's a partnership with a bunch of other groups. So we're working on that, and we'll continue our presence up there, and it will be increased from what I'm hearing and what I'm looking for as we move into the spring. So I know if anyone has any questions, be glad to take them, but I appreciate having me on. I think you're muted, Dave.
Yeah, Captain, thank you for the update. First of all, you mostly just answered the question I was about to pose, which was your impressions on sort of conditions on Mass Ave and Albany Street in light of the changes over on Southampton and Atkinson Street. Did you say that you are anticipating getting more resources from the city come spring? And if so, that's certainly good news.
I'll say from the department,
right?
Everyone's aware, and we talk about it all meetings, but we bring in some units from outside districts that assisted us. West Roxbury, we had cars in. They really helped me. I could use them because they're not familiar like my offices are in the area. As you've probably seen their cars. We're keeping them in fixed posts, 723 Harrison Ave, where I'd have a D4 car usually. Outside 774 Albany Street. So being able to keep those offices visible there with the visible deterrent, and they're told, out of the car, move the groups along. But it allowed my offices for me to get in those alleys more, to follow these groups, to get up behind 811 Mass Ave, to get down on Trask Street, and we're doing those offices were pulled out recently, and now we'll have the visibility at those locations, but we're also on the move into those other locations. But it's just moving people from one place to another, and there's what we're seeing is no encampments, and that was what was the purpose of the encampment protocol, obviously through the city ordinance. And it's kind of a fine line of someone hanging out. Can you move them from sidewalk to sidewalk? But the route I'm taking is, if obviously drug use, but if someone's behind, people are going under tops, people are going on behind umbrellas, blocking doorways of people trying to get in appointments, and we're not going to allow it. People have to get to where they're going, nurses coming in, people shopping. So and we try to move people towards the resources, but a lot of people aren't taking advantage of them. And we're doing our best down there to keep the presence up. It's an extra, 8 officers a day that we're putting down there, 2 supervisors. The supervisor I hear on the radio all day monitoring it. They're out of the car. So, it's big with the bus stops, people coming and going. We want to keep that clear with children and whatnot. So, but we'll the warm weather is a concern, but we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Thank you. And I've been really impressed by the level of coverage that you've been able to sustain for the past 4 months. And I think it's really made a difference. We have 2 questions for you in the chat before we let you go. One is, how has the coordinated response team from the mayor's office helped with the issue of homelessness and encampments? And then the second one is recognizing maybe it's not a top crime, but the person has noticed a lot of scooters going the wrong way, driving on the sidewalk, running red lights. Is that something you're observing? And what, if anything, can police do to curb that?
I'll talk about the scooters second. The coordinated response, early on, it was great. It's just, I don't have numbers. I'm not going to speak for anyone else. We work with anyone, I know our street outreach, Peter Moscatola was unbelievable, so anyone that's looking for a service, the services are there. But right now, I don't want to give numbers or we work well. D4 works well with anyone. Our best team, we have 2 clinicians here that are getting called out all the time down there. But, me watching cameras and driving around, trying to monitor the situation in other parts of the district, I see my officers, but I wouldn't know basically who unless someone's wearing a vest. So I don't want to speak to what other ones, but I know everyone sees us out there, and everyone's doing their best, at the meetings I attend to, work on this and hopefully have I say, and I'm not going to answer, but and everyone knows for years on these meetings, what is the end game? And, that's what we're trying to get to, because, it looks much better. Obviously, Atkins Street's cleared off. There's no encampments. The only encampment we've had of people trying to live in tents and whatnot is kind of down by the library. And we use this same encampment protocol that we use up here down there. And it worked out for a couple people getting their property secured and having them, one got into an apartment, which is good. So, yeah, everyone's doing their best from what I see. And as far as the scooters, it's the biggest complaint on the district that we have. I know we have Mass and Cass, but these scooters are all over the place, especially down the Back Bay. Everyone wants their food delivered now, which personally I think's crazy, but that seems the way we're going. Outside the Chick-fil-A, we're having serious issues. So there's myself and Sergeant Holgart, we have an auto unit. We've had some flyers made up. We were going to do a little program, but that got put on the back burner last month when we had the conflict with Palestine, where we just got so busy with some rallies and protests that popped up, and were popping up basically nightly. So we couldn't really do what we wanted, but we have flyers printed up that we're going to go down to our busy locations where we see this, and we're going to start handing them out to people on these scooters, depending on if they're 50 cc's or not. Like, they're supposed to be registered. Someone's supposed to have a license on these. And we want to put a solid project together, give some warning that what's going to be coming. And we're planning on, I have to get some approval on some stuff of taking a hard line of towing a bunch of these and whatnot. But we go down on Boylston Street, and I could sit there with Sergeant Hogan and a few officers. We could clear that area out. And one of the big issues now is Ubers and cars also. Boylston Street is basically people triple parked in certain locations trying to pick up food. And we'll move them out. The second we drive away, there's 15 more cars or scooters pulling up. So it's a big issue. Safety is a concern with it. But there's also some other issues that, people have brought up to me, that you're targeting people that are just working, trying to make a living and whatnot. So, we're trying to see both sides of it, but I can't have people going up on a sidewalk, running someone over in a crosswalk. So you know, when this plan takes effect, some people aren't going to be happy, saying you're picking on a group of people that are just trying to work, but they're breaking the law too. So people can tell me what they feel about that, because it's a fine line. They're putting us in the middle of that, but you know, it's hundreds of complaints over the last couple months about that. So I hear yous. We have a plan that we're working on that we hope will work. There'll be no chasing these. We're not allowed to do that. People, I'll pull up next to a guy and I'll be like, dude, you just ran that red light. He'll look at me in my car and just run the next red light. You know, so we're not allowed to go after them, just so people realize that, especially that we're talking scooters delivering food, but we have groups come in on the dirt bikes and four-wheelers. You know, it's a recipe for tragedy. You know, we can't risk lives, even though people feel lives are risked with the actions they're taking. We have a strict pursuit policy that we officers adhere to. So there'll be more to come on the scooters.
Okay, great. I think we have one more question maybe, and I think
And
Jen,
I think you have your hand up.
yeah, Jen.
Sorry, yeah. It's not a new question. I just wanted to clarify. Well, I don't want to speak for the other person, but it's not just the delivery scooters. And we've had this conversation in our neighborhood association with you before, and we understand there's not much you can do about it, but it's not just the food delivery scooters. It's people commuting to work and to school. They're just all over the place. It's like the wild, wild west. Doesn't matter what direction the traffic is going or the lights or anything else. So I just wanted to say, it's not picking on the people who are trying to make a living.
No, I agree, but that's what's come back to me, and people are saying that to me. If we enforce the scooters, that's what I was talking there. I hear your point on regular people running red lights and whatnot. Definitely. Thank you.
Jonathan?
Thanks, David. So I just want to quickly echo some of the comments from David Stone and some others, that most of us are super impressed with the continued presence of the D4 team throughout the neighborhood, specifically in the squares, in the Worcester Square area, down by East Berkeley, in the Back Bay. It's a massive, massive district. We know how critical the Massachusetts situation is, and we know how resource restrained you are, but the presence has been extremely impressive. So I just want to say thank you to that. And this might just be a question for folks on the call, maybe that are meeting you for the first time. What are some things that as a community we can do to support you in your effort to get more resources? What are some things that we can do as a community to show continued support to help you make your case?
Well, as far as the department knows, we just had a huge recruitment drive. The test is actually March 16th. And I think when I applied to take this job years ago, we had about 10,000 people take the test on the list. It was kind of impossible to get on. I went through the cadet program, which is white shirts, 2 years kind of internship with the department. We were just looking to hire 6, being 50 white shirts, and we got 6. For the full civil service job, from last test, having 300 people apply, going from 8 to 10,000 when I took the job, it's insane. So we did get that up over 1,000. You know, big recruitment drive. You know, this last class that just came out about 3 months ago, D4 got the most offices, 22 offices, and they're hoping to get 200 into the academy starting March 16th. And, you know, we usually lose around 50 or so. So it's not official numbers yet. There's one more physical fitness component. They can try a second time. People didn't make it. But one thing years ago the department used to do, the recruits would rotate through 3 stations. So I'd have them for 4 months to go to a different district and then another district. And that kind of went away when I got here, because to get officers to buy into a system and then 4 months later basically have to retrain 22 more officers, and then they were on the move again in 4 months to train another 22. It just goes away from the mission here that officers have bought into. You know, you kind of, once you get on the street, you pick up habits of different stations. So this talk again, that's going to be started back up again. And I'm trying to talk to headquarters not to do that. And I don't really need any help with that, because hopefully it doesn't happen. But if it does, that just makes it, these are the alleys we hit. This is Peters Park. And these people aren't with a field training officer again, because they've already been trained on their 30 tours. They're coming in here, can get right in a car, but they wouldn't know our areas. They wouldn't know our hotspots. So that's just something I'm dealing with here and hoping that doesn't happen. And I don't think it's going to, but if I hear that it is, maybe that I can get some community help with that, but there's different schools of thought nationally, that an officer should go see another part of the city he's going to work in, and see something different. But the way I look at it in District 4, we have everything, and you're seeing everything here. You might not be in, say, Hyde Park, West Roxbury, East Boston, but I think if you train the officer correctly, there'll be room for movement down the road.
Thanks for that. So basically show some love in D4 and they'll be all raising their hand to come work with you.
We got a great crew here. Great support from the community too. So no, I appreciate it.
Are there any other questions? Well, Captain Sweeney, thank you. I suppose it's a good sign that there are limited questions for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I'll get that date out and hopefully some people can make it to the community comp stat. But thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Captain. By the way, it was pointed out to me that I introduced some other people. I failed to introduce myself. I'm David Fine, and I'm president of the EBNA, East Berkeley Neighborhood Association. So now we have two brief business updates. First, we have Jim Kochener and Ted Hawkins from Coda Group, whose new restaurant, Baleira.
Nice.
Baleira
Baleira.
is set to open very shortly at the Troy building. So with that, let me turn it over to Jim and Ted.
Hi,
Awesome.
thank you very much for having us. We're super excited to be opening up. It's taken us a little while, but we love the way the restaurant looks and we love the way the food looks, and we're just happy to finally be open and have the neighborhood embrace us.
Yeah, I think we sat in once or twice on these meetings before, so it's nice to be at the finish line and opening tomorrow. What started very theoretical is very much a reality. So yeah, so Baleira, Portuguese inspired restaurant, cuisine wise, but we definitely pull influences from all over. And right now we're going to start off in March, dinner service only 5 days a week. So that'll be Wednesday through Sunday. And then in April, we'll transition to 7 days a week as well, just to kind of get our feet underneath us for the opening. And yeah, we're super excited. I hope some of you guys have maybe popped your head in or checked it out. Sorry, we're in a room that the lights turn off if we don't move. But the point of it is to bring more activation to that corner, and we're just really excited to kind of continue to plant our flag in the South End community. We're at SRV right now, one of our other restaurants, and though Baleira couldn't be any further and still be in the South End, still be 02118, it's still part of the South End. So we're excited to open up tomorrow.
Will you be having any outdoor dining during the warmer weather?
Definitely. There's a strip of outdoor space right in front of the restaurant that's still kind of awninged by the Troy building that we'll be occupying.
We're also trying to make that more enclosed. There's like several planters out front, and some folks kind of like to sit on the steps out there. So we're trying to make that one continuous line of planters. But yeah, hopefully sometime mid-spring we'll try to activate the outdoor patio area.
Terrific. Well, welcome to the neighborhood. We're all anxiously waiting to try it out.
Yeah, no, we're super excited. It's like I said, it's taken us a little bit of time, but we've been very thoughtful with all the elements of the restaurant, whether it's the design or the food or our staff. So we think we're well positioned to finally do it, even though we're a little tardy.
And remind me, full bar menu?
Yep.
Full liquor license.
Full liquor license, yeah. There's about 15 seats at the bar, plus there's a bunch of high top tables in the whole bar area. The seating capacity is right around 100 people between the bar and the rest of the restaurant. Open kitchen. Yeah.
You can tell we're very, very happy about the build out. We really like it. We hope you guys do too. And the rest in general.
Could you spell the name of it?
Baleia.
Baleia. Portuguese for whale.
Excellent. Does anyone else has some questions for Jim or Ted?
I'll just say bem-vindos, and being Portuguese, maybe a little biased, but super pumped that Portuguese is coming to the South End. So welcome. Will there be any plans long-term for renting out the restaurant or for event space, or is it going to be primarily for seating and dining?
Always, always. Yeah, we love events at all of our restaurants. So not even down the road, we're definitely actively always looking to chat about events. And the space definitely has some event capabilities, inclusive of buyouts. But always keeping in line that we still want to be a restaurant and open to the public as much as possible. But yeah, events are super important part of what we do in the group as a whole.
Yeah, we have a full-time events person. So yeah, it is important part of the business. But yeah, as Ted said, very much appealing to like primarily we're a restaurant. I hope we live up to your high expectations of Portuguese food. So you'll have to let us know when you come in.
You already nailed the pronunciation of whale, so you're good to go.
Well, Jim and Ted, thank you. I have a feeling we'll all be marching over there quite soon to
Well,
say
thank
hello.
you for being so inviting to the neighborhood. Appreciate it a lot. Means a lot.
Thank you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we're excited you're finally there.
Absolutely. Say hello when you come in.
All right.
Have a great evening.
Now we have one more restaurant business update, which is from Dimitri Salakis on his new planned restaurant, Kaia, which was announced quite a while ago. And I think everyone in the South Bend has been anxiously awaiting to see some activity over there, Dimitri. So it looks like there is some now, and we're pleased to have you back to give us an update on how things are looking.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, construction has officially started as of last week. We hired the best in the business, so we hope to be on schedule by end of June to welcome everyone to Kaia. You know, Kaia is the goddess of the sea, so you can expect a seafood-focused Greek meze restaurant from my team, who also owns and operates Krasi in Back Bay, the wine bar, regional Greek food, and Brookline's Bar Vlaha, that focuses on a more traditional approach to central Greece, a more off the map, beaten path part of Greece. So Kaia, you can expect the Greek islands. You can expect Aegean vibes through the decor, the vibe, the food. We will have fresh seafood flown in from Greece and really transport you to a part of Greece that, you know, few people will give the chance to see, other than Santorini and Mykonos. But other than that, you know, coming to the South End, we're super excited. This will have a 24-seat bar, center stage, to kind of give a little of the energy off into the dining room that is on the perimeter. Extensive views. We also do have a patio outside in the courtyard of the Quinn building that we will spruce up and make very, very inviting. Other than that, you know, it's just an extension of our projects that we currently own and operate in Boston, and excited to be coming to the South End with another, exciting concept to piggyback the guys from the Portuguese concept, Baleira. So again, we're looking to really just put South End as the hot spot that it, I think, deserves to be.
And Dimitri, you said June, you're hoping, beginning and
End of June, early July. Our guys over at CAFCO are pretty on point and have a good track record. So I can commit to that. Liquor license is all set finally. We secured one with the help of our landlords who made it possible, but we're on track.
Excellent. Great. Do we have any questions for Dimitri?
Yeah, hi, this is Scott. I have a question for both. Are your websites up and running?
Kaia, not yet. It will be up and running probably closer to April, May.
Yeah, and then Baleira?
We have a splash page up. We're just waiting on our photography to come in, and then we'll have a big old website, but we do have a website up right now.
Any other questions?
BaleaBoston.com. Sorry, I should have said what it was.
I think there was a question on projected opening.
Yeah, projected opening was late June, early July. Fran, did you have a question?
Yes. Are you also, both of you, are you also doing takeout?
Oh.
We probably don't focus on takeout. We won't be offering third-party delivery services. There's more experience that you can enjoy, but we will offer direct takeout to consumers who'd like to pick up on third party.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, takeout's not part of the plan for us. We'll see if that changes down the line, but currently very similar to what was just said, more focused on dining in-house.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. We're excited to have new restaurants. Oh, Jen. Sorry.
Question for both groups. How many jobs will you be creating in the South End? And I know you have to probably cast a very wide net, no pun intended, but are you gonna focus or give preference to applicants from the South End?
So we'll probably have a team of about 40 to 50 new hires. We do have some existing people in the company who will take positions at Kaia. Whatever applications come in, we'll definitely take a look. We love when they're local. It's easier to get to and there's no excuse for traffic. So hopefully we do get some South End resumes. But for the core team, we are pretty much fully staffed already.
Pretty much the same answer. Yeah, we're about 50 total staff members. So and I mean, South End would be great. I live in the South End myself, so I'll count myself as one. But yeah, any applications that we get, we're not to say that we would give preference necessarily, but we're always looking to hire great people. And if they live nearby the restaurant, that's even better.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And the next item on our agenda is eagerly awaited, the streets and sidewalks. And David, let me turn it over to you for that.
Thanks, David. So one of the goals we had in putting together this joint meeting and the future meetings that we intend to have of these groups jointly is that we have agenda items that are of interest to everyone in our group, or at least potentially so, whether you live on East Berkeley Street or Northampton Street at the other end or anywhere in between. And there's certainly a lot of issues that could fit that description, but the one that really jumped out to us as the most obvious to start with was transportation, because literally the streets tie us together. Washington Street, Harrison, Albany Street, and all the little streets in between. So we put together a series of questions based on the conversations all of us have had in the past to put to the city. And we're lucky enough tonight to have Julia Campbell, who's the Deputy Chief of Streets, to speak to the questions that we put to her, plus any others that you bring up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia.
Thank you for having me tonight. I am also a neighbor, just to be clear with everybody. I also am in the South End, so happy to join this group and happy to talk with you all about our streets. I'm the Deputy Chief of Streets. My purview is capital projects, infrastructure, and design. So basically projects come to my team when they're ready to be designed past conceptual and then implemented through construction. And so I do see the list of projects that you guys have questions about. I just also want to be clear about like the level of where we are at the Streets Cabinet. I don't have a formal presentation because we don't have necessarily like formal designs or anything to present to you all. So I'd rather just have a conversation, understand concerns, let you all know what we are doing in the Streets Cabinet. I can maybe just start there by letting you know that we are building our work plan. I'm at home, there's the dog. We're building our work plan for 2024 and deciding what streets are going to be paved this year through the various contracts that we have, all of the curb ramps and sidewalks that we're going to be working on for this year for the whole city. So that's something we're wrapping up right now. I'm going to be sharing the construction schedule with our internal partners at the city and then with the communities where we're going to be working in coming weeks. So that should be something that you can expect from us pretty soon. And the particular streets that you all want to talk about do pop up on the data that we have. And so just to let you know, what we do every year is we survey about a third of the city streets, all of the city streets, for the quality of the pavement that they have. So basically asking the question of like, how bad is the pavement out there? Our team goes and measures it. And so if we do about a third of the city every year, that means that the oldest data that we have at any point in time is about 3 years old, and then it turns over and we get new data. And we do a little modeling for the streets that we have older data on, and we just try to figure out basically what's the state of streets going on, like how bad is the pavement in various neighborhoods on different streets. And we use that information to help inform the plan for what we're going to do in that year. So that's what we've been doing over this winter. The streets that you are asking about, they do show up on our data. We do agree that they need some attention soon. The other things that we take into account when we're planning our work are also utilities. So I'm sure you are all very familiar, all the work that's going on all over the city, sometimes planned work, sometimes emergency work. That is just, utilities out there digging a hole in the ground because they have to. We did have some emergencies out on Harrison not very long ago with flooding from Boston Water and Sewer and National Grid's work out there. And what that means is that we coordinate our work with their work. When the utilities are done with a project, that is when we will go in as the city and restore the street to a good quality of pavement. We don't want to be wasting any taxpayer dollars by going out there and paving just before somebody's going to be digging a hole and working on a utility. So sometimes we can't fix a street, even though we agree the pavement is in really bad shape, until the utilities are done with their work out there. So that's just something that I want to level set with what we consider and what we have to keep in mind when we're keeping our streets in the best shape that we can. And I'm seeing some questions come up here. So maybe it would be great for me to just hear from you, and we can maybe just begin this conversation of what streets are the ones that you're most concerned about.
Julia, if I can go, it's David Fine over at EBNA. The residents of our neighborhood have been anxiously awaiting word on the redo of Harrison Avenue from Herald down, trying to alleviate, some of the dangerous spots, the enormous traffic jams caused by the Whole Foods parking lot and others. For many years, we really had no input. People would come to meetings from your department and basically said, "Oh, I don't know what's going on," sort of thing. had no information. The last we heard, which was about a year ago, was that, well, before that we heard plans were being redone and had to be refinalized. I don't know where they are. The last we had heard, the plans were in the final stage and were about to go out to bid sometime soon. And we've heard nothing since on the status of the plans, the status of the constructions, nothing. It's been sort of a couple of years here of silence. Do you have any update for us?
So you're asking about Harrison Avenue and Travelers?
Harrison Avenue between Herald and East Berkeley, and perhaps beyond down Harrison Avenue.
Yes, so that project has not gone out to bid. It is still in design. And so that means it's not going to be under construction like tomorrow. We're going to be finishing up design at some point. I can work on getting an update to you through Francis, who's also here. Hi, Francis. Francis is our communications coordinator for BTD, and so she's always the best person to ask when you have any question about what's going on.
Thank you, Julia. And I also added my information on the chat. So if you guys want to reach out, feel free to email me and I'll be happy to assist any questions or concerns.
Is there anything we can do? I mean, this is essentially the same answer we had a year ago. Although, frankly, less definitive than we had a year ago, more definitive than the year before that and the year before that. It's a terrible bottleneck. It's dangerous with cars parking on the median. When Whole Foods is busy, cars just simply cannot even get through. It's impossible. And that redo had been promised for a long time. We understood at the beginning you didn't want to do it because there was construction going on, and that made perfect sense. But now it just seems to have gone, let's just forget about it, sort of thing.
Okay, well, yeah, I can assure you we haven't forgot about it. I do have one of our engineers project managing it, so it is an active project. I'm not sure why there was a delay, but I do know that we are working on it. There are some coordination issues. You are correct. There was some development that was finishing up. There may also be some other utilities. I'm not sure. I'd have to get an update from the engineer. But I think they're still in the process of design. So I would not expect this to go out to bid like right away, but it is nearing the end of that process, and we can get you our best estimate through Francis as an update after the fact. And I'm sorry it's taken so long.
Well, that would be great if you could give us some sort of expectation.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that it is much needed. We do see it. I see it. And, we do want to get out there. And I think, I joined the department this past year, so I can't speak to previous administrations and why there were delays, but I do see in the records that there was some kind of hold on it. I'm not sure why, but we are moving forward now.
Did you want to ask anything more, David?
Well, I may raise again, but
okay,
some of the others have a chance.
Okay. Yeah, we have a number of people with their hands up, and we also have some questions in the chat. So what I'll try to do is weave back and forth between them so everybody can get their question answered. So John, go ahead. You have your hand up.
I live on Worcester Square, and Worcester Square was slated to be repaved probably about 10 years ago now. But then the building on the corner of Worcester Square and Washington Street was built, replacing the old Height TV store. Then COVID hit, and we've never seemingly hit the repaving schedule again. And we're just wondering if, in fact, that will take place this year. There doesn't seem to be much utility work going on, even with some units being redone. And I'm going to just assume that if we were scheduled to be repaved, that East Springfield and the other streets on this side of Washington were set to be redone also at the same time, and most likely delayed. Again, post-COVID, here we are, and we're just wondering what that status is.
Got it. Okay, so Worcester Square in particular.
And East Springfield.
Okay.
You have no update then?
I don't know off the top of my head. I will have to have, again, an update provided to you about, basically we can do our best estimate of if it's not getting paved this year, we can kind of give you an idea of like, we've got some idea of what the pavement in the broad scheme of things looks like. And the sort of urgency that we might be putting on those streets compared to other things that are deteriorating faster. That's about, we only make this schedule in the winter before each season because the quality of pavement changes so quickly every year.
Absolutely, that's problem in the Northeast that we live in. The other question that I have then is usually when is the repaving schedule for the city posted to the website? I always periodically check because I know it does get posted, but it hasn't been yet for this year. When does that usually happen?
Yeah, so we're finishing up right now, and so you can expect it to be posted this month.
This month?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. And Julia, we can try to follow up with you after the meeting with any questions that you're not able to answer, just so that you can have an organized list. Let me ask you two questions in the chat, and you can take these in either order. One is somebody's commenting that on Waltham Street, utilities went in and now that's a mess. And their question is that on the list for repavement soon? And then also Harrison from Whole Foods to Mass Ave is also a mess. So they'd like to know what's going on, if anything there. And then the other question is a little different. Double parking in the dedicated bus lanes on Washington Street is a constant issue. It affects the Silver Line riders, drivers who are dealing with buses merging, et cetera. Are there any plans being considered for physical infrastructure on Washington Street, improvements like separated center running bus lanes or something along those lines to deal with that issue? So take those in either order.
Sure, I'll start with Washington. So to be, just direct about it, no, we're not thinking about reconstructing Washington at this point. That is an enforcement issue that we're going to be looking to Boston Police for assistance with. The double parking in the bus lane and having, buses delayed because of people misusing the lane. That's an enforcement thing that we just need help with. We don't have plans to rebuild Washington right now. We're looking at expanding our dedicated bus lane network to other neighborhoods before we go back and reconstruct something that hopefully can be solved with enforcement. Okay, and then you mentioned
there were questions about streets that are, or blocks that are in bad shape right now and whether they're on the list for repaving, and they were Waltham Street and Harrison from Whole Foods to Mass Ave. So essentially the entire length of Harrison.
Yeah, that's a lot of Harrison. Yeah. Let me see. Okay, so Harrison, I believe we do have some attention going to that at some point. I know there are major utility projects happening on parts of Harrison, and that's something that we are coordinating with Boston Water and Sewer National Grid on. So that is one that we can get back to you on about, expectations for when those utilities are going to be clearing out. Waltham Street, I believe that's also an area where we had some National Grid work. Whoever put that question in, did you also see the utility trenching that was going out there? Is that what the question was in regards to?
I'm not getting anything out of this. I'm gonna.
Go ahead, Julia.
Okay. I was just trying to get clarification on Waltham Street, what the question was about. Just general quality, but I was trying to ask if that was
Barry, Barry, you're the one who put it in. Do you want to explicate it further, or?
Yeah, so Waltham is one that we actually have been working with our Office of Neighborhood Services on, in that neighborhood, those couple of blocks where National Grid has been doing a lot of trenching and just repairing and replacing a lot of lines. Some of that work we can see, like the settling is already happening too fast after they've closed up some of their holes and some of the trenches. So that's something that we're working with them on, of making sure that they repair the patchwork, according to our standards. That's something where we don't want to necessarily be using city dollars to go repave a street, when that's something that the utilities are supposed to be putting the street back in a decent condition and meeting some certain standards. So that, I believe, should be taken care of in coming weeks and months. We can't necessarily do a whole lot of work, and neither can the utilities with the pavement materials during the winter, because it's too cold for them to be handled.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before I go back to Steve, who has his hand raised, I just wanted to go back to Washington Street for 1 second. So the question was raised in the context of whether there'd be anything done physically vis-a-vis the bus lane issue, and you said no, and explained why. Is it also, did I understand you correctly that in terms of other sort of major redesigns of Washington Street or major reconstructions, none of that is contemplated at this point? The street is kind of what it is for the foreseeable future in terms of its physical design?
Yes.
Okay, because one of the things we're hoping to get out of this conversation is which streets are, sooner or later going to be redesigned, which ones are kind of more or less going to stay the way they are, et cetera. But so the answer for Washington is it stays the way it is.
Yes.
Steve, go ahead.
Julia, I'm Steve Fox. A pleasure to meet you. I too am a guest in this to this group. I happen to chair the South End Forum, which has been in hiatus since the COVID crisis hit us, and we're just on our way, clawing our way back. But one of the things that I wanted to mention that kind of touches on a bunch of the questions that have already been asked is really a process question. Those of us who have been around for a long time remember back in the day when on a quarterly basis, we would meet with streets or public works and transportation together and begin to understand on a quarterly basis what's going on. We would also, for example, get a preview of the capital plan long before it was finalized, and then we would actually see it, and be able to post it, before it actually went out to all of the other agencies of the city. So there was a partnership that occurred between the community and streets and public works and transportation that really helped to inform people in the past. And I want to suggest that was a very workable arrangement that helped to keep people up to speed, informed you as officials making decisions about what's important or not important, and allowed us to be able to know when we could reasonably expect action. And it didn't have to wait a year before we came back and said, like David said, geez, nobody's quite sure what's going on this project. So I'd like to recommend that we find a vehicle to have, at least with this neighborhood, and you can choose to do it with whatever neighborhoods you want to, but at least have quarterly meetings to talk about the entire streets portfolio, because it's so impactful to everybody in every neighborhood. I live on Rutland Square. We've got a whole series of issues that we're concerned about, including Columbus Avenue. And so I think it would be very valuable for us to do this on a South End wide basis, and encourage people to come and learn what's going on. But at least the neighborhood associations would be able to address their questions, and we wouldn't end up playing catch up. Just a recommendation from the past. It worked really, really well in the past. I'd like to commend that to you and hope that you would jump on that opportunity, and we'll work in partnership with you to make that happen if you're in agreement.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. We can certainly take that into account. We would want to be able to offer the same to all neighborhoods. So that's something that we would need to have like a full citywide plan for, to have that level of detail provided so that we could have everybody basically at the table at the same time. We want to make sure we're spreading the resources of the city in an equitable way. But I certainly understand your point about partnership and transparency. And that is something that this cabinet is trying to bring to the communities. We do see that there's been some black boxes. There's been just decisions made behind closed doors, and then things just happen. And we understand that that's not a good way to bring communities along. And we do want to be more inclusive and have people there at the table making decisions about how streets are going to function.
Just to follow up quickly, I think that the decision-making on speed, I think we're calling them humps now as opposed to speed bumps. But the decision on speed humps did not in fact involve any of the neighborhoods. So that was kind of a black box decision-making that didn't really help people to feel like they were full partners. It may be as a reflection of the fact that you can't do that across the city because of resource constraints. But the way that the decision was made sort of left people scratching their heads saying, how come we didn't get to even mention what we consider to be important in the decision about which streets get speed humps and which don't, and what the schedule looks like going forward. A real partnership means that decision-making is at least inclusive. So I really recommend that you use that as a good example of how we need to sort of think about moving forward in the future.
Sure. I do want to take the opportunity to talk about speed humps for a minute. The reason why you didn't see any processes about discussion of speed humps is because we made a citywide policy to put speed humps everywhere. The reason why there was no discussion of what streets they go on is because they go on every street. And that was made as a policy decision to keep as much of the city as safe as possible because of the level of speeding that we see, the level of complaints that we receive on a regular basis about cut-through driving, speeding on neighborhood streets. And if we went neighborhood by neighborhood, that's what the previous neighborhood slow streets program was. And we just didn't see improvements coming to communities fast enough. We only got through maybe 5 neighborhoods of, very intensive work together, but only a very limited number of communities were able to receive the benefits of neighborhood slow streets. And some of them still haven't been constructed today after many years of work. And so that's a policy where we said, the most effective way that we can bring safety to neighborhoods is this one element that's easy to build, quick to build, and we can put them everywhere. And that's why it was done in that way. And so you'll see some of those rolling out across. I'm sure you've come across some already. But that's why we are going to be making some decisions like that. If it is a citywide thing to keep everybody safe, we do reserve the right to try to keep people safe. And that's why the safety surge was crafted in that way. It's not meant to be something that we pop on you particularly. It's just as a city, we want everybody to receive improvements as quickly as we can.
Julia, before we move off the speed humps, can you just spend 30 seconds, first of all, explaining what they are? I think most of us know, but maybe not everybody knows. And then 2, there's a map that's available that anybody can look at that shows the streets that have been designated for speed humps, the streets that might get speed humps, and then the streets that are ruled out because they are too large or have or too much traffic or have other factors. That's correct, right?
That's correct, right.
And
so if you go to the Safety Surge website, you can then click on a page for speed humps.
Right.
And there's 2 maps. One, you can search and see if your particular street is eligible for speed humps. And then the second map shows all of the areas, and that's by census tract, for where the speed humps are going. And we didn't want to plan out everything. So we just said there's basically a couple of groups. There's the groups of neighborhoods that are receiving speed humps actively right now. There's the other cities that are, other groups that are coming in before 2026. And then there's other neighborhoods that are coming after that cutoff point. We just didn't plan all of them, all at once. So that's how you can check if your street is eligible for speed humps, and then also check if it's in that first group that's going to be delivered before 2026.
Great, thank you. So there's a couple people with their hands up, but then there's a ton of questions in the chat. So let me just do 1 or 2 more in the chat, and then Jen, you'll be the next person with their hand up. So these questions are, again, they're basically, when will particular roads be repaved, regraded, etc. East Berkeley between Albany Street and Harrison is in dire need of attention. Road surface is wavy. lots of noise level, et cetera, et cetera. And then the same person raises Harrison Avenue and Travelers Street. Condition of these streets is substandard, imposes risks to motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians. When will they be regraded and repaved? So East Berkeley between Albany and Harrison and Travelers Street are the questions.
Got it. Yeah, I think anything that's a particular street for repaving, we will get back to you if you want to maybe provide us with a list. We can just report back on what's on this year's schedule. And then is it helpful for you all to maybe receive like any information about what we have on our books about the quality of pavement in these areas? Basically, we grade them all on a scale of 1 to 100. Okay. And the lower the number, the worse the street.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, we can give a little summary of like what we know about how bad it is. And then also if there's any utilities that are out there that we're waiting for them to clear out, we can give you that date of like when we think that they're going to be done so that we can come fix the road.
Okay, great. And we now have 5 people with their hands raised, and we have a number of questions in the chat. So we'll try to move through these fairly quickly, but reach justice. Question. Has there been any analysis of traffic patterns after the Tremont Street project? The number 43 bus gets stuck behind the garbage trucks crawling along Tremont every Tuesday and Friday morning and makes me late for work.
Okay, Tremont Street traffic delays?
Well, yeah, the question in particular is now that the redesign is done and more or less fully implemented and everybody's doing parking where they're supposed to now, have you gone back and done a traffic analysis sort of to see how it's actually playing out? And this person's experiencing that the bus gets stuck behind the garbage trucks on garbage days, and that creates tremendous backups.
Yeah. We are going to be doing a follow-up analysis on Tremont. It hasn't been enough time yet. So we finished construction. Actually, we technically still have some pavement markings to finish on Tremont. So we're going to let it go for a little bit and just see how traffic patterns behave through some summer months, through some fall months, and we will be collecting data. We will be monitoring, delays to some degree, but the most important thing that we are measuring is safety. The Tremont Street project was a safety project, and we already saw, even in the pilot phase before it became granite curbs and bricks, that there were some safety improvements, even just from the quick build version of what's out there. So to us, that's the most important data points that we're going to be collecting. But yes, we're also going to see how the street is operating, and just make sure that we're doing our best to keep deliveries going in and out. And I do definitely see the double parking that happens that, slows down buses, slows down other trucks that are trying to get through. And that's another enforcement issue that we're trying to get some assistance with.
Okay, but the bottom line is you are planning to do a sort of a post-project traffic analysis that should provide some insight on this.
Yes, yeah,
Great.
it just hasn't been enough time yet. It's just been winter for a couple of months since we finished most of the project.
Okay, Jen, go ahead.
I want to try not to repeat all the same questions that you keep getting. You can probably tell the level of frustration in all of these groups. And Julia and Francis, you are brave for being here. And I will tell you that we have put many people before you through the same ringer, and we've gotten the same non-answers. So we don't hold it against you personally. One small thing I wanted to say when David was speaking earlier, not only were we given by people from BTD and a consultant who was doing design work, I don't even know anymore who these people were. We were told there was even funding in place for fixing these stretches of Harrison Avenue. And that seems to have evaporated or been subsumed by whatever was going on in some other part of the city. So that's one question. But I wanted to come back to something you said early on. You talked about patching sidewalks or something after utilities are finished, or you said paving. And you live in the city. When you just pour blacktop into these holes, they just get worse and worse and worse. So when you said paving, is that what you're talking about after the utilities? Because it really is becoming like a minefield on some parts of the South End streets.
Yes. So Are you asking, I mean, I can explain, I don't want to over explain something, but if you're asking how are streets supposed to be put back together after a utility works in them?
Yes, when you said the word paving, and to me that paving is when you grade a stretch of street and then you start all over again doing it properly, and that is never what happens after utility work.
Yeah, so it can be a combination of several things. The utilities are supposed to patch their work in a certain way that doesn't fall apart. And so I think a lot of what we see out there are poorly done patches. We have a brand new head of our inspection unit who is in charge of that. And my boss, the chief of streets, myself, the head of construction, and our new inspector head, we are all getting together to try to figure out a better way to enforce what's been going on because of these issues that you're bringing up. We agree, it's terrible. Basically, our inspectors are out there chasing the utilities around and, you know, trying to make sure that they compact correctly. That's the main reason why these things just can, you know, sink into the ground as soon as they're done walking away, because they're not compacting correctly. We also have some funding that comes from the work that the utilities do. They pay into a fund in their permits and in the fees that they do, where we have some dedicated resources to do basically larger patches. And it's the same process that you're calling grading, where we basically get the big machine out and you grind out the top layer of the asphalt. It's that, but just on a smaller scale, more targeted around where the trench is. And that's what we as a city would go do with some of those funds that we receive from the work that the utilities do. So we basically put a bigger patch that's better, that's to the correct standards, and we do grind out some of the existing asphalt so that it blends in to the rest of the street. We did some of those over on Mass Ave at the end of last year. If you see some larger patches, it's maybe half a street wide. That's what that process is. And then as a last resort, if many years have gone by, we will go and fix a street eventually, but we don't want to do that because that's basically outsourcing proper street care onto the city when it really should be utilities that are being responsible for the work that they're doing out there. So it's a combination of all of those things. We're going to try to bring the utilities along and have them be better stewards of the street. But that's something we have to get better at too, is helping them be better stewards.
Are there consequences for utilities that are not doing the proper fixing when they're finished? Do they get fined or anything? Or because they're utilities, they just operate with impunity everywhere all the time, no matter what?
We have a limited ability to police them. So, kind of the worst thing that we can do to them is to deny a permit. And we have tried that in extreme circumstances, and that has resulted in them pulling an emergency permit. So they basically go around our permitting system. So it's best for us to work in partnership with them. Of course, we do have this basically regulatory role over them. But we don't have too many tools other than asking them to be responsible. We can give them a hard time, but there's not a lot that we can do to actually stop them from doing the work. And we want them to do the work. I mean, honestly, a lot of these are emergencies. These are upgrades to utilities that everybody needs. We want them to do the work. We just want them to do it correctly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. Julia, there are two comments that are more comments than questions in the chat that I just wanted to read to you very quickly. They're just really for your awareness, I think, is what people want. Somebody who lives on Mass Ave says, please know that we also are experiencing sleep-depriving heavy trucks, no desire for any more of that kind of traffic. Thank you. And another person says, the worst stretch of street I'm aware of in the entire city is Mass Ave North after stretching from Melnia Cass. That 25-foot stretch that goes up toward Albany Street, I think is what they're talking about. So just to put that on your radar.
Got it. Okay.
John, go ahead.
Julia, question for you. Question and a couple of comments. First of all, when I look at the speed bump map, the speed humps for Worcester Square, it shows one line going up towards from Harrison towards Washington. There is no line coming down on the other side of Worcester Square. Does that mean it will be, the speed humps will be on both sides, or does that mean just one side? Question one.
On Rutland Square?
Worcester Square.
Worcester Square.
And where the question is coming from is years ago when we were trying to do something about slowing down traffic on Worcester Square, because we are a wide square, and traffic, we can actually park along the square if needed, and fire trucks can still get through. But we were told years and years ago that we would never get to see speed bumps on the square because we're an emergency egress to the hospital.
Well, I can tell you that we did exclude streets that were emergency access routes from the speed hump map. So if something was an emergency access route, it would not be showing up.
Okay, when you look at that for Worcester Square and looking at the line only goes up one way as opposed to going around the square. So that's why I'm wondering is, are we getting speed humps on both sides or just on one?
Yeah, I would have to ask one of our team members to double check on the data. That would be unusual for us to only put them on one side. Yeah.
That's what I was hoping. So then the next question is, I'm kind of deflecting away from the roads for a second. No one really has talked about the brickwork, about these conditions of the sidewalks, particularly on East Springfield. It's abysmal. If you're taking your life into your own hands, particularly even in the winter when there's ice and whatnot on East Springfield Street, and what's going to be done to help the brick sidewalks out. And as I say that, I just want to say kudos to the Public Works Department for fixing the sidewalk on Worcester Square after some utility work was done. They did the usual waiting, like 6 months or something before they did the brick repair work, and they did a fantastic job. So thank you for that.
That's great to hear. We love to hear when good things happen. So thank you.
That's what I figured.
Yes. Okay, so brick sidewalks on Springfield. Okay, so we are planning to deploy an area specific contract for brick in the South End in 2025. We're doing the North End in this year, and we're planning the South End for next year. So that's when I would expect things like that to get fixed, unless it's like a safety issue. If it's like an emergency safety issue, that's when we can kind of bring the few resources that we do have for imminent safety hazards to get fixed on a shorter timeline. And that's best if you submit a 311 request or let your council office know, let our neighborhood liaisons know in the Office of Neighborhood Services, something that's an emergency, like let us know as through, as many ways as you know how, and we will get that fixed as quickly as possible. But just regular maintenance, I would keep an eye out in the coming year.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Peter?
Thank you. Can you be more specific as to when the neighborhood will be informed as to the schedule for Harrison, as well as the scope of the work, both in terms of the length? Is it going to be phased? Is it going to be done all at once? Is it simply a repaving job, or are there other modifications being made? I have that and two other quick questions.
Sure. So we will definitely include those points with the follow-up about, as much information as we have about Harrison.
Okay, and I want to reiterate the sidewalks. I was going to bring it up, but fortunately, John and spoke to them. I live on East Springfield Street. The sidewalks are really, really bad. In places, I think they are so bad that they're really threatening failure of major sections because there's so many bricks are moving. And related to that, can you explain the process to get the utilities who have made temporary repairs, what the process is to get the full restoration done? There are several places, again, on my block where there were emergency repairs done with asphalt patches that are now more than a year and a half old. My understanding is it's the utility's responsibility to make the final restoration. Is that correct? And if so, how can one move this so that they're done?
Right, and I'm sorry, was the utility with the temporary repair, is that in a sidewalk or in a street?
Sidewalk. I'm talking about sidewalks.
Got it. Okay. So technically, yes, it is the responsibility of anybody who gets a sidewalk, like cut permit to do work there. It is their responsibility to put it back. I don't want to speak to this particular location. I'd have to pull the data and look at the permit and see what's going on. But we are seeing, just in general, some permits just kind of stay open for a very long time or forever, because it has become, with the cost of doing work, inflation, all the cost of construction in recent years, sometimes it becomes a better deal for people or whoever to just walk away from their sidewalk deposit and have the city basically keep their money. And then it's on the city to fix it. And so sometimes that's been what's happening. We are working internally to try to see, can we fix this discrepancy between the cost of the permit and the cost to repair so that we have fewer of those things happening. So we can, again, if you give us the specific location, we can look and see what happened at that place and see if we can get the utility out there to fix it, or if they've abandoned their permit, and that's something that the city is going to be taking care of now.
So procedurally, to close a permit, restoration has to be done versus abandoning a permit?
Yeah, I should use the correct terminology. A sidewalk return deposit is basically what it is. So when you are going to do work in a sidewalk, you give a deposit to the city, and it's supposed to be about equal in cost to the cost to repair it so that you repair it. The problem that has happened in recent years is we haven't increased those costs with the real cost to do the work. So it becomes a better deal sometimes for some developers or utility companies or whoever has pulled a permit to just say well, it's a better deal for me if I just let the city keep my deposit and I just won't ever return and finish that work. And that's just a problem that we're having citywide. We can look and see what's going on with this particular location.
So then many times there's not an incentive for the utility to make the restoration, apparently. Has the city considered increasing the cost of the permit so that there is an incentive that the utility will make the restoration and it does not cost the city the money to make the restoration itself?
Absolutely. We are looking at that right now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we have 3 more people with their hands up. I think we've covered everything that is a question in the chat. If there's anybody else who has a question that hasn't been asked, hasn't asked a question, if you could put your hand up now. We're coming up on 8 o'clock. We can go over a little bit, but we want to be respectful of people's time. So it's going to be Jacob, John Conley, then John Fitzgerald. Jacob, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Quick question about bicycle infrastructure. The Tremont lanes are really great. I bike on Washington Street a lot. 2 questions that come up for me and a lot of other people who bike in the area. First off, whatever happened to the lanes on Columbus between Dartmouth Street and downtown? They came back somewhat, but it's very dangerous to be on a bicycle between Clarendon and Dartmouth now, which is oftentimes the way into the rest of the South End. Because the bike lanes disappear at Berkeley, and then the road narrows considerably. Under the Walsh administration, those lanes started at Dartmouth, I believe, and was much safer. Secondly, are there plans to figure out how to actually connect these lanes? Because a lot of people are going to Cambridge, they're going elsewhere in downtown, they're going to Back Bay, and there's a lot of scattershot lanes and some great corridors, but there's not really connections between them. And that must also drive the drivers nuts because you have bicyclists on narrow streets trying to pick their way through between the sets of bike lanes. So I'm kind of wondering, when do we get those last couple connections that make this into a really safe grid and helps the traffic flow?
Yes, so that's a great question. And completing the network is absolutely what we are focusing on. So currently our bike lane portfolio is made up of, closing gaps in network and also completing the streets that were part of the Better Bike Lanes from Mayor Wu's announcement at the end of 2022. There will be a series of lanes, kind of like a mini network that we're going to be putting in into the Back Bay and, kind of building off what we finished at the end of last year on East Berkeley. So that, keep your eyes open for communication from us about that in coming months. And your second question about lanes that disappeared. When you say disappeared, do you mean like they wore away and just the lines are no longer visible?
Yeah, I mean, they were,
okay.
When COVID hit in 2020, there was a bike lane that was put in Columbus, I believe starting at Dartmouth, possibly Clarendon, all the way to downtown, and that was not fully replaced. And so now Columbus is quite dangerous. And that's unfortunately the way to Cambridge, to Beacon Hill, et cetera.
Yes, so we are definitely looking at completing the network through Columbus as well. Any lanes that have just kind of worn away, that is something that we look to refresh them as often as we can. I think this group is also aware that Columbus needs to be repaved at some point soon. And so at that point, we would also be repaving and, refreshing all of the line work as well.
John Conley.
Thanks very much. I'm in the East Berkeley Neighborhood Association. I want to thank you for being here. It's very informative. One thing I was hoping to gain.
Oops.
Sorry. Sorry. Hopefully I'm back. I appreciate that you do the study of about a third of the city every year. What is that data showing you? I mean, what is the condition of our pavement? Because if you were to ask me, I know what I would say, but I'm really curious what the empirical data is saying. And I just want to echo what someone asked about Harrison Ave from Whole Foods to Mass Ave. It's no exaggeration that it is, Harrison is one of, I think, many streets, just happens to be where I live. That's really bad. And the second part of that question, I guess the most important part, is how long does it take for a road that is bad to get the repairs it needs? Thanks very much.
Yeah, we have a overall city score of, from 1 to 100. The overall city score on our pavement is about a 68. So that includes lots of streets that are fine and like have really good scores, and probably like a fewer number of streets that have much worse scores, kind of weighting it heavily the other way. If that's something you all are interested in, we could share some of that information. It is, there's no reason we couldn't make it publicly available. For anybody who is a pavement preservation nerd, we do have like very deep data on that. Our consultant team takes great pride in the analysis that they do. And for your second question of how long does it take for a road to get worked on, it just depends. Sometimes we will see that a pavement quality has decreased like significantly between one data collection point and another, and then, all the utilities will be cleared out and there's no problem. We can go out there and take care of it that year. Other times, kind of like how I've been mentioning throughout this chat, there might be ongoing conflicts out there that even though a street is in really bad shape, we still can't go out there and fix it because there might be a big development getting put in on that stretch, or maybe there's ongoing utility work that we know Boston Water and Sewer is out there doing, lots of work, sometimes really extensive sewer separation projects. And so that's usually the sort of thing that pushes us off, where we're not able to get to a street, even though we know it needs attention. We try not to let streets that are in really bad shape get that way. It's usually that way because there's something preventing us from doing the work.
Thank you. So Julia, we have 2 more questions live and then 1 in the chat, and then we'll let you go, I promise, if that's okay. So
No problem.
John Fitzgerald, go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And Julia, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. Just a quick thing on speed humps, because it's something that I've brought up to the mayor and a question I have, because it's obviously a concern no matter where I go in the district. And I've talked to other councilors about what the main thing they hear when they're out there, and everybody across the city is asking for speed humps. And so when we look at the map and how you guys are laying it out and saying, we're doing this section, and then, I know Savin Hill is on the record for like 2027 or something like that, and folks are looking out at when they'll get speed bumps. I offered this suggestion to the mayor, and I just wanted to throw it out to you as well, is if you could have counselors or even other folk, just so every neighborhood feels touched, if we could implement the speed humps in a way where we take care of the more violations, the road that have the most serious violations, the speedways, etc., and focus on those first, I think we might be able to get into more neighborhoods, take care of the major issue or the main street or streets that are causing this, that has the speeding on it. And then we can come back around for a second wave and get into that secondary and tertiary streets. But I just think it's an easier way to speed up the process of actually getting a speed humps into each neighborhood, and at least taking care of the main perpetrator of the speeding on the streets. And I don't know if that's if there's a reason why it can't be done that way, but I brought it up to the mayor a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to bring it up to you now as well, to think of a different way of implementing the street hubs so that we could, maybe folks could feel the effects faster citywide. But just your thoughts on that. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Counselor. And it's great to hear that you're receiving so much positive feedback about the speed hump program. We hear it too, and it's really encouraging. So that's great that you're hearing it as well. We could consider that. We're happy to have a conversation with your staff about like what streets in the neighborhoods in your district you feel are the highest need. In general, the way that the contractors that are doing this work is they work in a whole area all at once. I don't know if you saw them at work at the end of last construction season. They are very fast, and we basically have to give them an entire neighborhood's worth of work, and they blow through that in about 2 weeks. And so we can't really like pinpoint exactly where we want them to go in each little neighborhood kind of sprinkled around. Because they're doing so many at volume, we prepare an entire neighborhood and just basically let her rip. And that's how we're getting through as many as we can. What we could do is we can look at each area, and if there's a particular area in your district that you think should go faster than another, and it's just a little order, we can do some small changes, but we're trying not to alter the program too much because, again, we're just trying to get them out as quickly as possible.
Understood. Thank you for the feedback, and sure, I'll sure to follow up with folks afterwards. But yeah, because I always just think if you asked every city councilor, hey, just give me the top 10, 15 streets, and let's just take care of those, and knowing the speed at which these folks work, that they could go into a neighborhood and sort of, get those 15 streets, prioritize those, and then move on. But I understand that there are limitations, but I'd love to talk it through further. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Julia, this is a question about Albany Street, and it's from somebody who lives near the proposed, well, not proposed, but someday to be built Exchange South End project on the former Flower Exchange. And the question is, to what degree is the city involved in the placement and design of receiving and delivery ramps at the various BMC state and privately owned buildings along this stretch? And And then also presumably the new buildings that would come in exchange South End. To what degree does the city have authority over that question of placement of delivery ramps and that sort of thing?
Delivery ramps. Are we talking about driveway cuts?
We're talking about these are sort of institutional buildings owned by BMC, by BU. They have big loading docks off of Albany Street, many of them. And some of them are there now. Maybe some will be moved in the future or proposed to move. The question is just kind of what are the
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm talking about the right thing with the terminology. So if we're talking about driveway curb cuts, the city does regulate where they can go. So anytime they're changed, that is something that development or that building or that private property owner has to file with the city for permission to change it. And that's through our Public Improvement Commission. So we do that, regulate where they are, how big they are, making sure they're not, not following our standards or being put in places that they don't belong. So anytime that a change happens, that's something that we do regulate.
Okay, so anytime somebody wants to cut the curb for whether it's a loading dock for a tractor trailer or a little driveway for their little car, the Public Improvement Commission has authority over that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Hey, David?
Yes, Marie, go ahead. You were the person who asked it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you understood what I was talking about.
Sorry about that. You should have just jumped in.
No, you said it perfectly. But Albany Street, the BMC has a number of buildings and the state have a number of buildings, and their delivery system is it's like a driveway. It's just a slip. It's really a slip. So when these big tractor trailers, they're coming along Albany Street, they have to go past it and then back up. So there are 3 or 4 of them at BMC, and there's one now, and there'll be another one soon at the state buildings. And they back up the traffic. So I find it, I drive that street every day to work, and I'm just amazed that they are allowed to design these delivery systems like this, where big tractor trailers, they can, and the dental building, there's just a slip of a space, and these big trucks and back up into it, and they back up the traffic and stuff. So that's my concern, that we're having that, and then all these new constructions going on, a couple of private buildings down towards the other way, towards the flower exchange thing, and that whole project is going to be huge. I mean, the traffic on Albany Street is outrageous now, and rush hour. I mean, it's just a lot. So do you know what I'm talking about regarding the ramps? And I know that new construction has to, submit plans and stuff, but I'm just so surprised that they're allowed to have these little slips of delivery systems, and they're actually using the city streets for their delivery systems. That's how I'm seeing it.
Or are you saying that the tractor trailer is like extending into traffic when they are unloaded?
Sometimes they are, but they're holding up traffic. So they're on Albany Street, they're going past this little slip, and they have to back up. So the cars in back have to stop and wait for them. And sometimes they actually are extending into the street.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, we've seen that in some places across the city where perhaps when a driveway design was approved, it was with smaller vehicles in mind. And just, kind of across all shipping, logistics, economies, we've seen just like a move to larger vehicles like you're describing, like tractor trailers, like, the Starbucks on Tremont gets its delivery from a tractor trailer, which is perhaps not appropriate for delivering to a, small retail store on.
These are big institutions, the BMC and the state buildings. So I'm kind of shocked about it. But and David's heard me say this a number of times. I apologize. So the city doesn't get involved, you're saying?
I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble understanding exactly what the problem is. If they're backing up, just causing a traffic delay while they're maneuvering into a space, I
And
think
there's like 3 or 4 of those slips within 200 feet.
I think it's a question that we need to take up in the context of the future redesign of Albany Street. I think that's part of what the ask is, that you take a look at that as you when that does happen.
Thank you.
That's the question. So
okay.
Good. Thank you, Marie. So that's our last question. I'll just leave you with one final ask, Julia, which is, somebody says that when you do reevaluate Tremont Street traffic in light of the new construction, can you please evaluate whether people's perception that some of the cars have now and traffic have shifted onto Washington Street is accurate? There's a perception in the neighborhood that the redesign has, whatever virtues it has caused some traffic to move off Tremont onto Washington Street. So that's something somebody would like to have analyzed. Okay. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for taking our many questions. Sounds like, so we owe you follow-up with regard to some of the things for which you didn't have answers tonight, but we said we would get you a list of those so that you can get back to us. I think we'd love to have you offered a list of sort of the conditions of the pavement conditions list. That's certainly something that I think would be of interest. So again, thank you. I'm going to turn it back just to you, David, to wrap us up in the waning moments of our meeting. But thank you again, Julia.
Thank you, David. Well, everyone, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Again, we'd love your feedback on what you think about these joint meetings. And we'll look forward to having them periodically in the future. And we thank you.
Right.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.